Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to continue from where we stopped last time. Now, this time we are going to actually introduce the preamble of modeling, which normally looks at data. Now, data can actually have different meanings, but from a primary level, it can be considered as the building block that can be used to actually generate information. So we actually can be able to generate information from data. And now, on that point, we can now say what is information. So information could be defined as processed data. Processed data, and it has some designated meaning. Which people can actually use for a number of reasons. And normally, from now an econometric point, data has what is called the structure. So we have got what is called the data structure, and at the same time, it has what is called data types. Now, in terms of the data structure, we can be able to explain it data as from macro and the micro level. Macro level, this is more or less like an aggregated data, and the micro level, it is actually lower level data, which normally can actually affect individuals, communities, etc., whereby aggregated data, it could be national level data or regional data. So in terms of the data type, data can actually be defined as integers, and they can be defined as Boolean, which normally Boolean is a logic statement which normally represent data as yes or no, representing 1 or 0, or we can actually represent data as a string where you can actually put names of individuals, districts, etc., and at the same time you can be able to represent data now as bytes and bits. So this normally looks at the lower level. It is normally regarded as the machine level. We can be able to represent data. Now, having done that, I want us to look at the process that normally generates data. So we can actually generate data from a number of processes, which you actually did it in research methods, which I cannot repeat at the moment. Now, when that particular data has been collected, we process it. So there is actually a process mechanism. Now, in the processing, it involves manipulation of data, derivation of data to create new dimensions, which can be used to actually generate the information that we need. And from this information that is generated from the data, we can be able to interpret it and then be able to generate policies from that, or make decisions which can be of paramount importance. So that's the most important part that can be determined. Now, on the same, I want us to actually focus on one thing, which is the different levels of data that we discussed earlier on. Now, in modeling, the principles of data is actually important, as I said earlier on, because we normally can be able to define it from, let's say, a cross-sectional approach, which normally you talk of it as a primary data. Now, primary data, as we earlier only say discussed in research methods, is actually data that you can collect from the respondent, and you can be able to use it for the purpose that you are collecting it for, and you can have different tools of collecting that particular information. Now, let's assume 1, 2, 3, 4 are the respondents, and you actually can be able to actually look at people having different types of attributes. Like in this case, you are looking at people with TVs, and on the other part, people with radio. So if you can put 100011 like this, looking at this information, you can be able to actually generate like a variable which can be called media exposure, which can look at the linear combination of first TV and those with radio. So if you can combine adding the two, then you can actually have 1, here you can have 0, and here you can have 2. So looking at this media exposure in modeling, we actually can be able to determine the frequency of the values. For example, the frequency, and here you can have the number. So the frequency of 1 in that case is appearing twice, 0 is appearing once, and 2 is appearing once. So looking at this scenario, we can be able to define 1 as either having a TV or having a radio. And if you have got a 0, it means that having neither a TV nor having a radio. And when you have got 2, it means that these are the people that have got both radio and TV. So you can actually see that when you're collecting data, you are collecting it as loose information, and using modeling principles, you actually can be able to generate the combination, which is called linear combination of the variables, in order to determine what is called a derived variable, and this derived variable is actually called media exposure. So this is actually the formation that we must be able to take note of, because in modeling, we actually do what is called visualization of data. And the visualization of data is actually very principal, because we actually can foresee data in a number of areas. So let's look at the sources that we draw data from. Now, each and every data that we have is actually drawn from what is called PESTEL. So I can put STLE here. So this aspect is the last E is called ecology. This is legal. This is technology. And this is the social aspect. And this is the economic. And this is political. So we can be able collect data or draw our data from a number of spaces which can define our research. For example, in a political space, you can be able to look at the issues of leadership, issues of governance, issues of governance, etc., and even issues of willingness to actually conduct a particular type of a project that can be defined from that point. And in terms of economic, you look at the income, employment, even education can fall under that particular sector. In terms of the social, you look at issues of marital status, you look at issues of age, issues of gender, etc. Now, you can be able to actually look at these ones as the entities that can give information. In terms of technology, you talk of adoption of technology, you talk of absorption of technology, you talk of even new invasions, related to any activities that we have, and even use of like science to actually enhance our activities. It can be agricultural productivity, agricultural marketing, or any value chain activity that can be associated with whatever activity that we are doing. And then we have got the legal aspect, which looks at the rules and procedures. And under the ecology, you actually look at the change of activities over time. So you actually can be considering to say maybe the value of kwacha was maybe $1 1-to-1 in 1980, and at this particular moment is 800 to $1. So you can actually see that with 800 you can actually buy maybe little relative to whatever $1 could buy in 1980, because ecologically we are defining different environments which can actually have different parameters that dictates economic events. So normally, when we are talking of the scope from which data is actually collected, this is actually the scope that we can define. And this scope is actually defined as the pastel environment. So each and every data that you have or you want to actually wake up with, it is actually emanated from this particular section in a pastel environment. So you can actually reflect back to the topics that we are doing. You must actually see that you cannot go outside this particular situation. Now, if you're talking of issues of marketing, they are under environment, and issues of behavioral aspect of the people, they are under the social, and issues concerning the rules and procedures, they can be under political or legal, and any levels of adoption, they can be under T. And as you are assessing transition from one level to the other, looking at the variability over time, then you are talking of E, which is actually the ecology aspect. So this is the major important part. Now in the next section, we'll be able to discuss now what constitutes the model and what determines the model, so that we should actually have a better understanding of this particular principle, so that as we are using it, we should be able to understand the way we can think in the modeling world. Okay, so we are going to continue the session in the next